I don't honestly even remember the first time I went to the liquor store. I just did it, like as if the 16 years had not passed. And that's terrifying. And, a good reminder for people that we're never like, completely safe. So, and I just started sneaking because everyone saw me as the sober lady.
Welcome back to There Is Always a Way, a special limited series from Hope Comes to Visit. I'm Danielle Elliott-Smith, and as always, I'm so glad you're here. One of the greatest gifts changing my relationship with alcohol has given me is the opportunity to hear and learn from the stories of so many incredible people. What I've discovered is not only that no two journeys are exactly alike, but it is incredibly powerful to hear these stories and know you're not alone. Some stories include a rock bottom, some begin with quiet curiosity, some feature unexpected detours, but all remind us that healing doesn't happen in a straight line. Each conversation in this series explores a different path because every story has something to teach us, and each has the power to help someone else feel connection and hope. As no two journeys are the same, and there is no one right way, it's important to remember there's always a way to redefine your relationship with alcohol. My guest today is both a longtime friend in the online space and real life, and someone I've admired for ages. Not just because she's a beautiful writer, but because she's willing to tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Heather King believes in the power of story, the communion of writers, and the sacred connections that happen when we choose honesty over perfection. She writes about grief, midlife, faith, deconstruction, reconstruction, and as she says, whatever her ADHD decides to focus on that day. For nearly 16 years, Heather was sober. Then she relapsed. Today, she's sober again, and she's choosing to talk about it. I know that's incredibly brave because relapse is still one of the most misunderstood and least talked about parts of recovery. It carries so much shame when what so many people really need is understanding, compassion, and hope. Today, Heather shares her story openly, not because she has all the answers, but because she knows someone listening may need to hear that they're not alone. Heather, my friend, I'm so grateful you're here. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you.
I can't tell you how extraordinary it is. It's a word you and I shared in the online space, how extraordinary it is to see your face.
Yeah, you too. Hi.
How are you doing?
You know what? It just depends on the day. That's the honest answer. I mean, this is still very new, getting sober again. So, and with just everything that life has in it right now at our age, with like perimenopause and my ADHD and just everything that comes with midlife, I feel like I'm just kind of on a roller coaster most of the time, and just the state of the world and our country affects me a lot. I'm a deep empath. So yeah, I'm definitely better than when I was drinking, again, but it's, a healing process for sure.
You and I have the empath in common, and I think we always have. And I will start by saying you and I met in the online space. It feels like a million years ago, right? And you were sober at a time that I was not. And you were sober at a time that I didn't realize that I needed to be sober. And I can remember thinking, wow, that's interesting. And then it morphed into, that's amazing. I wonder if I should. And then it morphed into, God, I don't know how. And then you became someone to me as that inspirational, aspirational, if she can, I can. And I think that's kind of the beauty of stories and recognizing someone else lighting the way for another person. And I would love, if you wouldn't mind, you talking about your sobriety journey initially and then what led you to where you are right now.
Sure. Well, originally, I had really spiraled in my drinking around 2008. I always had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, but it turned into full-blown alcoholism when my two boys were small, and I now have a daughter too. But I, had undiagnosed ADHD. We went through some traumatic things with my son needing to have a brain surgery at 18 months old. And I coped that way. And we did the whole geographic thing. We moved thinking, I was like, nobody knew how bad my drinking was. So, I thought if I moved, it would fix it. And actually that's when it spiraled. Like there's always a spiral when it's heavy. And then it's just something like you can't even fathom all of a sudden, And so I was drinking at that time. I was drinking like 2 or more bottles of wine and then whiskey. And I'm not a very big person. So it was a lot of alcohol. And at that time, I battled it in my mind a lot, just like this is not obviously alcoholic behavior. Like I looked up AA meetings, but was too scared. And, I was just kind of holding it all. And I was writing online at that time. And, had a community of other bloggers and a readership. It wasn't huge, but it was, like a lifeline at the time. And I had always been really honest, except for about that one thing. And so the night I decided to quit drinking, it was the middle of the night. And I just kind of had my, I can't do this anymore. It just happened. It just kind of came over me in the middle of the night. And I got up and wrote in the middle of the night and told, set it on my blog and published it the next morning saying, I'm Heather. I'm an alcoholic and I need to quit. And that became, a lot more readership all at once. I don't know that I would do that again early in sobriety, but I am really grateful because it brought me accountability and it brought me the women I had been watching, like Lisa Page Rosenberg and Stephanie Wilder Taylor, other women who had been writing about sobriety. I had already connected with them. So that gave me these people like in my DMs and texting me and telling me I can do it. And so writing about it was healing, and it was accidentally helpful to other people. But at the same time, I think because it was so public, I became, kind of like a poster girl for mommy alcoholics, unintentionally. And that was okay in the ways I just described, but it was also, I think something settled in me that I already struggled with, which is, I had a lot of shame from like my religious background. I had not a really true love for myself, and a long way to go. And I didn't really work on those deeper things because I was so wrapped up in that kind of persona. Even though I didn't know it, I just was living, and we don't know what we don't know until we know. So, so that, then I didn't blog after a while, and it was just, I went to 12-step meetings and I didn't crave alcohol. The more space I got from it, the better I felt about myself. And there was a lot of growth and wisdom during those years. And then really long story short is, after a lot of life trauma in the last 10 years, which I got through without drinking, didn't think about drinking as the answer, remembered that alcohol will only make it worse. And, just played the tape all the way through all the things I was supposed to do. And it wasn't hard to not drink. Even though both of my parents were dying, they were diagnosed with terminal illnesses at 67 years old and 69 years old, Alzheimer's, which is trauma, and leukemia, which is medical trauma too. And I became their primary caregiver. And I don't think I would have not been able to do that. I had moved back after a divorce, I had moved back to my small town where I grew up. And a lot of that was to have my parents' support with my 3 kids. And so I basically gave and gave and gave and gave to a complete depletion. And there was a lot I couldn't choose about that. It's around the clock when it's that kind of caregiving. And then I lost both my parents 10 months apart. And my mom went first, and 10 months later, my dad passed. And my dad was like my person, very cut from the same cloth, like very, all he had to do is look at me to know and see me. And so losing that was huge. And then I had to find work right after taking care of them to pay the bills. And I ended up in a really high stress job. And it was also caregiving. So my nervous system just broke at that point. And I had a lot of physical symptoms because it was so bad, the intensity of the stress level and my inability to cope with it anymore. And I don't honestly even remember the first time I went to the liquor store. I just did it, like as if the 16 years had not passed. And that's terrifying. And, a good reminder for people that we're never completely safe. So, and I just started sneaking because everyone saw me as the sober lady. So I had little bottles in my coat pockets, little bottles in my bags, I'd go to social events and go to the bathroom and drink, and it was not good. And it lasted for 7 months. I would get through the workday as much as possible. And I had here in my office, I had a drawer that had little bottles in the back of the drawer, the whole thing you never imagine you would do. But it is that just cunning, baffling, and powerful thing that it works. If your nervous system is messed up, it works. And it does not continue to work. It makes it worse. But in that initial moment, when that's what is so terrifying about it, is that you arrive right where you left off. So
one of the things about you is that part of your catharsis is writing, right? And you are a remarkable writer. Your gift is putting things into words that people can only, it gives me chills even thinking about it. And I've continued to read as you've written when you were writing about caregiving with your parents, and gosh, my heart just continued to break for you as you were caring for your mother and caring for your dad. And I knew that your dad was your person. And one of the things that you wrote was that at one point your dad said to you before he passed, "You're not okay." And you said, "Yeah, no, I'm okay." And he said, "No, you're not okay." And you were thinking I've got this. I'm holding it all together. I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
And somehow he knew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And at that moment, you were not drinking.
No.
How do you think he knew?
Well, that's how he knew me. And I think that was literally he was on his deathbed when we had that conversation. And I actually told him, because I wanted him to feel free to go, how we all do that at the end, you give the person permission, you're trying to help them not hold on to what you're going to feel. Mm. And so I didn't know that I was lying, but I just looked at him and said, "I will be okay." And he said, "No, you won't." And it wasn't mean. It wasn't too bad for you. It was
right.
It was
you shall not be okay without me.
Yes. Yeah.
I cannot go.
It was just like, I know you and I know how close we are, and you need to accept that you're not going to be okay. Like that's what he meant by it. And because he had seen me not be okay for years. And
Right.
as much as I was trying, and I would admit it to him often, we would sit and talk all the time, like about how both of us felt, especially taking care of my mom. And, we had a lot of just camaraderie around not being okay. So, but he knew I wasn't going to stop, and he knew he couldn't ask me to stop. It wasn't an option for me. But the things I did do that like were my own like alcoholic behavior was I continued to take care of like people in my community too. And like when there was a fire, I ran into it. I have a close knit group of friends. It's a small town. There, people even if you don't really know them, and
Yes.
well, I'll bring a meal and I'll go talk to them and I'll go. I didn't have space for that at the time. I needed meals brought to me.
Right.
But I was still doing that stuff. And, later on, as I admitted to my closest people when I was drinking, I would say, I have relapsed. I'm drinking right now, and
how long did it take you to admit to one other person that you had taken a drink?
Not very long. I've always been filterless, and I have people in my life that I can trust to be vulnerable and be in the messy middle and be able to say like, I'm not ready to stop right now. I don't know what I'm doing. And I had all these justifications, like, well, I'm just experimenting because it's been so long since I drank. Like maybe it's not that bad. And at first it wasn't, but it didn't take long for it to be like, now I know how that feels again. And I did it every day, by the afternoon. And then I would be passed out by 9 p.m. So totally unavailable for my family. I would drink, I was drinking hard alcohol. So, I would drink a bunch from the time I got done working until, like we had eaten. And then I would just get in bed and not have any idea what happened for the rest of the night. And obviously that was hard on my family. They also knew, but by finding out, we think we're so sneaky and like.
So sneaky.
Yeah. And I was putting bottles like behind the garbage under the bathroom sink as if that's like the best hiding spot in the world. And my daughter went to look for something and pulled the garbage out and was like, she yelled for me. Like, what is this? Like it shocked her and terrified her.
Right.
And I justified it. Like I was like, I just didn't want to put them in the garbage because I don't want you guys to be scared, but I'm fine. And those have been from a long time. And, it just it's baffling because it's not who you are.
Right. I can remember my daughter saying to me, I know you're putting empty bottles of wine back in the wine fridge. And I thought, I got you. I started filling them back up with water.
Yeah.
And when I was in treatment, I called and said, okay, I'm going to tell you where everything is hidden. And they said, oh, don't worry. We found it. And I said, oh, no, you did not. I promise you did not. Even at 5 years in, I moved bins over. Jeff and I are divorced and our divorce was so amicable. I still had stuff at his house after I moved out because I moved initially into an apartment and then into a house that wasn't as large as where we'd been. And I moved some bins over that had old pictures and old things from my childhood. And I had them stacked in my living room. And I looked over and I thought, what in the world is in that box? And it was photos from my childhood. But I go and I look and there's an empty wine box. And it's 5 years old. Right?
Yeah. Right.
I'd been sober for 5 years at that point, but it was one of my hiding places. Right. And I can remember sitting in a meeting during my treatment and a woman saying she was rehabbing her house years after she got sober and she was pulling up the floorboards and found empty bottles. I mean, we are conniving that way. I will tell you one of the things that's interesting about listening to you is anytime I have ever, because you hear the phrase play the tape out, right? When you think about what it looks like if I was to start drinking again.
Mm-hmm.
For years, when I first got out of treatment at my 30 days, I did not say I will never drink again because I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
I had heard so many stories of relapse. I didn't want to drink again, but I didn't want to make promises I wasn't sure I could keep.
Yeah.
And I just thought, like, I was really in that I'm going to do 31 days and then I'm going to do 42 days and then I'm going to do 63 and I'm just going to keep trying. And I was at that point just committed to not giving up what I had already done. And at some point I thought, okay, I really don't want to drink again. And I started to play the tape out. What would it look like if I drank again? And I think at this point, I could sit down and have 2 glasses of wine at dinner and I could walk away. However, and this is where your story comes in, within a week or two, I would want more. And then I would start to hide it because I am the sober girl. I would want people to know I'd started to drink again. I wouldn't want my kids to know I'd started to drink because right now, anytime anyone calls me and says, hey, can you come pick me up? I can say yes. And I wouldn't want people to know. So all of the behaviors of my hiding and not like, and all of that lying and would all start to come back. And then I would be someone who was asleep or passed out by 9 o'clock. And then I would fall into the blackout stages again because that's who I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, your story is a reminder. And it's also interesting too, because you said that you were experimenting, like maybe you could do it again. As I hit 7 years, right? I remember in treatment listening to people, so many people relapsed around 7 years. And I thought, why 7? Yeah. What's the big deal about 7? So I started doing research, and at every 7 years, every cell in our body regenerates.
Oh, yeah.
So at this stage in my life, I no longer have a cell in my body that is familiar with alcohol.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's normal for the body to start saying, maybe I could do it again. Maybe, just maybe, I'm different. Maybe I could go back to it.
Yeah.
And it's only in hearing stories like yours and remembering the version of me that isn't good at it.
Right.
Just is not good at it.
Yeah. No. There's no moderation for us.
So at what point did you say you said you drank again for 7 months? What was the version of Heather that said, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
This is not fun.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. It just got to the point where I was having embarrassing moments, where I would be in public and drink too much, secretly. But then my friends that knew I was drinking would kind of be like, Heather, you've had enough, and it was kind of like being babysat. That doesn't feel good, and they shouldn't have to do that. That's not a friendship, So, and I fell one night. I went out to my car to get something out of the back seat in the garage, and there was stuff, so that I had to kind of maneuver around the door, and I lost my balance, hit my head.
I feel like you and I are the same person. I mean, legitimately, this was, I had always promised myself I would never be that stumbling, slurring, middle-aged woman. And that's exactly what I became. Yeah. I fell, I would wake up with bruises. I would cut my knee open, and I was constantly making up like, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Couldn't have been that. And I honestly didn't remember the fall fully. I told my husband the next day, I think I fell. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, and I can't find my phone. I looked everywhere. He was looking everywhere. He went to work. I didn't have my phone all day. And, you know, you just walk around going, how can I be living like that? What the hell? And I felt a bump on my head. I'm like, well, I certainly fell. And I could kind of tell I had a concussion. I could tell like I wasn't right. You know, I was really extra foggy and like had to work, you know, it was just bad. And then he came home from work and I said, I really think I fell because, you know, and he's like, well, where do you think you were? And I showed him, you know, I remember trying to get into the passenger door. And so we turned around and looked at what was there. And he's been a contractor his whole life. So there's a lot of metal tools sitting right there. So I'd hit my head on something metal. And then he's like, oh, there's your phone. So I had dropped my phone when I fell and I didn't even know. I had no idea. And, you know, I mostly didn't remember it. And that's, you know, of course, that next day was when I was like, I'm done. Wow. Like, this has obviously gotten really out of control. And then it lasted like 2 days that I was sober after that fall. Because I had gotten to the place where around 3 p.m., just the agitation and the like habit, it was like, you know. So I would give in, you know, I would find a reason to go get something at the store by myself or, you know, give a kid a ride and stop at the liquor store on the way home, whatever. And so then it was just like, I was getting so emotionally broken, like so mentally and emotionally broken. I cried all the time. And like, I was so unstable that I was terrified. Like, I am literally having a nervous breakdown and I have to figure out what to do. And I started calling inpatient treatment places and trying to figure out my insurance and kept drinking while I was making these plans, you know, and, you know, I just, it turned out that I couldn't go without having to spend like $20,000 out of pocket, even though I had insurance through my work. And so I was like, there's absolutely no way. You know, we had a lot of financial stress too. Like, it was just the perfect storm of things, you know, like we had moved and the house we moved from did not sell for over a year. So we were paying for a lot. And so I felt like I couldn't quit work. And I was allowing myself to stay stuck, and I had really legitimate reasons to stay stuck, and they're excuses at the same time. But there's a lot of validity to life being really awful to people sometimes. And
absolutely.
After 10 years, you know, of living like that, I have a deeper understanding of women who are in really difficult, you know, whether it's living in poverty or being a single mom living in poverty or, you know, a million things.
Dealing with kids or getting into accidents or a number of times I went into a hospital and was talking to a family who had that the average person would look at someone and say, no wonder you drink. You've lost this family member. You've lost this family member. You've lost this family member. You've lost your child. And the average person who doesn't have a problem with alcohol looks at them and says, no wonder you drink. And it's, some call it excuses. Some call it valid. Right. And it's, but for you and I,
right, we
recognize the spiral.
Yeah, that it's not going to go anywhere helpful to the stress situation.
Right.
It's a lot of mental gymnastics, and it's exhausting. You know, trying to hide and planning and all of that stuff is just so exhausting, and it's really nice to be free of that. But I didn't really answer your question. It just finally came to like enough of a, like, I was terrified enough. Like, I'm going to kill myself if I stay in this job and keep drinking. Both things needed to change. And so, because I couldn't go to inpatient treatment, I'm like, I got to get out of the environment I'm in to like reframe my brain. But I can't go to treatment. So what am I going to do? And I just had this idea of like looking for like Airbnbs or cabins to rent or, which I also knew isolation isn't great for people like us.
Right.
But isolation, like not complete isolation, being alone a lot and having time to heal and recover was what I personally needed because of how neurodivergent I am. For one thing, I am overstimulated by noon every day, completely fried. And I hadn't had space to myself in 20 years, and I was like, okay, if I set up everything so that I'm safe, I want to do this. So my daughter called it sober camp. That's what I ended up writing about.
Yep.
But it turned out to be the most, like, it was just a beautiful experience. And I immediately had that, I had the willingness to stay sober. I had the willingness to receive all the help I could get. I set up a lot of visits so that I wasn't completely like getting lonely. And it was my only opportunity to get out of my life and line up everything I needed, like a therapist, a chemical dependency counselor, outpatient group, for treatment. That takes time too. Like you got to do all this paperwork and then, all kinds of things. And it takes like weeks, sometimes. And some of it did take a long time. It was like the last week that I was there, and I was there almost 4 weeks. I finally had everything, like this happens on Monday, this happens on Wednesday, this happens on Friday, finally got that all lined up. And I don't think I could have done that in the like stress triggering environment that I was in. And I know people can't afford that. I relate to that. It was completely paid for by my friends. And that is something that I'll be forever grateful for, like the generosity of spirit of people who believe in you and believe that, they know you've got to do something, and they understand why you can't make treatment work. And, the support I had it's just a huge, I don't even know how to explain how grateful I am for it. And I know not everybody has that either. So this isn't an answer for everybody. But if it's possible for people, I think if they can't afford, I think inpatient treatment should be the first, priority, if that's possible for people. I wish I could have gone. I wanted to go. I was like desperate to go. And then it just didn't work. So I felt like I had to kind of create this thing. And I started the journey of like getting back to my creative self and back to somebody who recognizes that I am worthy of healing. I got away from the shame. I think, in the program that I did use for 16 years, or almost 16 years, the promises part, it never, it came true for me in the sense of I stopped craving. I stopped thinking about alcohol. But I struggled a lot. My life did not, I didn't have those like doors opening and the financial freedom coming and, all those things that you kind of are waiting for, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. And, and I just wasn't experiencing that really. And I think I needed this relapse. I don't recommend it at all because it could have ended in killing me. But I think for a deeper inner sobriety, for me, it has been part of sobriety, because I needed to not go like, oh, I need to get back to being sober Heather. I needed to go forward into being a new version of sober Heather, that digs a lot deeper into some of my issues. And now that I have more space for doing that. I'm trying.
I think I love that. And I think it's important to recognize, because a lot of times we associate relapse with loss of time. And I think that you're building on. And I think it's important. And how would you frame that for someone to remember that that you didn't lose the 16 years of sobriety you had?
Right. Yeah. Well, I just didn't. Like, it's in you, like I could have completely killed it over time, I'm sure. But all the things I learned over all the years, all the books I read, all the things I saw online, everything I heard in meetings that brought me peace or joy, that even if I can't always remember it with my brain, it's in my heart and soul, my heart gut, as I like to write about. You can't get rid of it. It's like trying to get rid of your soul. Like you just can't. And our old friend Maggie, who had the blog Okay, Fine, Damn It, and is now an amazing author of novels and an overall wonderful writer, Maggie Ginsberg. When I was telling her, because we shared a sobriety date because of my blog all those years ago, she read that the morning I put it out there and called me and was like, me too. And then we ended up like on the phone for like 4 hours that night, trying to keep each other from drinking. And we've shared that all this time. And I was heartbroken to tell her, like, not anymore,
Right.
but she doesn't look at it like that. And what she said was, Heather, you always lean towards the light. And, even in those darkest places, like falling and hitting my head, giving myself a concussion, like that wasn't gone. That doesn't leave me. It's who I really am. And so, just knowing that, just allowing myself to know that and not beat myself up, that does absolutely nothing. I want to be grateful for what happened just because of what it's going to mean for my future. And I am a little more this time around, a little more hesitant to like count my days. And I'm not yet even sure what that's about. Like, I don't even really know what the last day was that I drank. And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm just kind of like, well, this is just what I'm doing. I don't want to think about it that hard in a manner of like days, because we really do all just have today.
And I think that that's the beauty of it, because we all get to do it in whatever way, in whatever form, in whatever fashion fits the way that feels right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know like meetings aren't for everybody. And that's hard for people who do find their hope in meetings. It's hard for them to accept other people doing it a different way.
Right.
And I understand it. There's a different path for a lot of people. There are different kinds of 12-step programs or other step programs. There's the Dharma, there's like Dharma meetings that are more of a Buddhist way. Right. And people, I know a lot of people with long-term sobriety who, maybe went to a couple meetings and it just didn't fit them. And I have to trust them.
You're looking at me, right?
Yeah.
I went to meetings in the beginning and then it wasn't the right fit for me. And that's one of the reasons I do the work I do now, because I want people to feel okay pursuing sobriety in whatever means, fashion, form. I want them to know that it's safe and that you can do it without shame and without judgment, and that it's okay and you're not doing it wrong just because you're choosing a different path.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
I think that's important. Heather, how do you define hope?
Leaning towards the light. I mean, what Maggie said. And I also think for me, it's because like my ADHD and the way I have therefore like disassociated a lot, detached a lot, like have a hard time accessing joy. It's not like big exuberant excitement for me ever. Like I'm just not, my brain is not made that way. But I have this deeper, like it's always there, no matter what. And I get glimpses, and it's like I shared a song the first time I got sober, and some of the lyrics are, just little things, and like the light through the window and little things that like, and she says in the song, it's Sarah Groves, she says, it feels like it might be hope. It might be, like this, oh, maybe this is hope. Just like I have to experience joy with like, oh, maybe this is joy, because I'm not like, I'm such a feeler deeply, but oh, the tough, hard feelings and taking out other people's feelings, that's way easier for me, which is unfortunate. I have to work at the joy and the hope.
You're doing a beautiful job.
Oh, thank you.
Friend, it has been such an honor to have you on here with me. I am so grateful for your honesty and your vulnerability and your ability to keep going and your life.
You. You too. You too. I love what you're doing. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of it. It's an honor. It really is.
I mean,
I love you.
I love you.
I want to tell you, I do have a vivid memory. I don't have a lot of vivid memories, but one time when we were at a conference back in the blogging days, we were sitting just the two of us in a booth at some sort of like hotel bar and restaurant. And you did talk about your drinking. And I hadn't been sober for very long at that time. And you asked a lot of questions. And I knew it's weird. I think you probably have experienced this where you meet people and you just have a knowing. Yeah. And it isn't about judging. It isn't about being critical. It's not about being like, well, I know what you're doing. It's just a knowing. And you know what? So when you decided to get sober, I was not surprised, that it had turned into what it had turned into. But I was also like, this is what strong women who lean towards the light do when it gets dark, when it gets darker and darker, And so I've been so proud of you and I have loved watching your journey. I love you.
Oh gosh, you're making me cry. It's funny because I think I knew for a lot longer than I knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When it was starting to get bad, I have a memory of sitting at a conference at a table and someone was talking about TED Talks and they said, your TED Talk is your deepest pain point. And I thought by drinking. And then I was like, no. And then I went back to my room and drank by myself. Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I wanted to know what it was like on the other side. Is it something I could do?
Yeah.
Thank you for being someone who could answer those questions for me.
Oh, sure.
Thank you for lighting the way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. You're lighting the way for me now. So
I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful to you, not just for sharing your story, but for sharing all of it. One of the most important things about our conversation today isn't just the story, but it's about you lighting the way, and it's showing that everything isn't linear. Life isn't linear. Being human isn't linear. It's friends, if today's conversation reminded you of hope or of inspiration in any way, I so hope that you'll share it. And I hope that one of the things you will recognize in all of this is that there is no shame in telling the truth and being honest. If anything, there is courage in it. Whether you're quietly questioning your relationship with alcohol, wondering if something needs to change, or returning after relapse, maybe you're learning how to thrive in long-term sobriety, I want you to know there's space for your story too. If you'd like ongoing support beyond these conversations, I'd love to invite you to explore my new app, ReDefining Sober. It's a compassionate, personalized space designed to meet you wherever you are, with guided reflections, meditations, practical tools, and encouragement to help you reconnect with yourself and create lasting change. You can learn more at redefiningsober.com or head right over to grab the app at studio.com/Danielle. And if today's conversation encouraged you, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need it. And friends, until we get to spend time together again, take very good care of you. If you've been joining us on Hope Comes to Visit for a while, you've probably noticed that many of our conversations come back to the same themes: self-awareness, healing, growth, resilience, and finding our way back to ourselves. That's exactly why I created Redefining Sober, initially as a coaching program for women who wanted to redefine their relationship with alcohol, and now I'm excited to share as an app. Redefining Sober is a guided app for women who want to explore, question, or change their relationship with alcohol in a way that feels supportive, compassionate, and free from shame or rigid rules. Through personalized reflections, guided exercises, meditations, videos, and AI-powered support, the app meets you where you are and helps you build self-trust, reconnect with yourself, and create meaningful change. Whether you're sober curious, actively making changes, or already alcohol-free, you'll find tools, encouragement, and support designed just for you. To learn more, visit redefiningsober.com to get started.